Now let's dive in to the craziness of 2020 politics. Now that includes media shenanigans and political dynamics for this election cycle, Joe Biden, and more. I'm pleased to welcome to the program Liz Harrington, who is the official national spokesperson for the Republican National Committee and joins us now on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Liz, welcome to the show. It's good to talk with you.
Hey, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So, big picture question for you. How do you assess the job President Trump has been doing so far when it comes to this coronavirus crisis? I mean, we're hearing from the media, basically it's the worst crisis handling ever.
Well, of course, they would say that. The media has been unbelievably hostile, even in times of unprecedented crisis, and really a virus that the world had never seen before. And of course, there was a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of this, and we're still learning information all the time. And when you look at all these facts in perspective, you see President Trump has been on top of this from the very beginning and brought in the best people. He appointed a task force on January 29th. He shut off travel against the recommendations of the World Health Organization that said travel bans would provide no public health benefit. He shut down travel on January 31st while China was still lying to the world about this virus. So when you look at the decisive action from the very beginning and all throughout February as well, there was a testing system at the CDC that clearly wasn't up to the task when you have regulations that require all tests done in states to be sent back to CDC headquarters in Atlanta. We waive those regulations. That doesn't make any sense when you have to do the unprecedented task of massive testing that we've never had to do in this country before. So when you look at step by step and what the president's been able to do by mobilizing the private sector, you just saw him yesterday bringing in these companies. That's what made the difference to make the United States the leading tester in the world, not just in speed, but in quality, by bringing those companies in, the experts that can actually have the capacity to do it on this massive scale. And I think when we look back on all said and done, President Trump took the right steps at the right time, and appropriate measures have done throughout this process.
One thing that I was pleased to see with the president, and there was a little bit of shakiness when he talked about total authority of the president, but his policies beginning before that statement was made and after that statement have been consistently saying the states have the onus of responsibility for determining whether they're closed, whether they're open, how they're going to go about this, recognizing that each state may have particular individual needs. Hence why we can still have New York closed right now, while Georgia and to a somewhat lesser extent Colorado are starting to open. And that federalism position, I think, has been one of the most encouraging things about the president's policies, Liz Harrington.
Absolutely. We are not a one-size-fits-all country. We never have been. And it's important for states to make decisions that best are in the best interests of their own citizens. And so our response to a virus that was caused by central planning in communist China cannot be to have central planning coming to America. And unfortunately, that's what Democrats have been offering. You have Joe Biden musing with Al Gore about banning the family car during a pandemic, calling for the Green New Deal, which is nothing more than a central plan, the likes of what we've seen throughout human history that has failed everywhere it's tried, whether it's the Soviet Union or here in communist China and what we're dealing with now. So President Trump's approach has been relying on the unique qualities of what makes America great, which is that innovation, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the freedom to decide, that federalism that you spoke of. That is what will be used to solve these problems. And we're seeing it. Something that works in Florida might not be working in a state like Colorado, but those states are free to make their decisions. And you see Governor DeSantis in the Oval Office just now explaining to the rest of the country what he did and what worked. And that's what's great about having all these factories of democracy. We can learn what works best and apply it in other places.
Liz Harrington, again, our guest, national spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Let's go to how the media has been covering this story. In Cut 8, I played this earlier at the outset of the show, but it's stunning how the media has been just obsessing over this musing of President Trump last week, the idea of injecting disinfectants, but not in the way that the media has been presenting it. And it was an idea that he was looking at his guiding scientists and saying, you're kind of looking into what might be able to do to clean people's systems out and that sort of thing. Well, they've been obsessing over that musing on the part of President Trump to the point now where they're saying, there's been a spike in poison control calls as a result of this. Here's CNN highlighting this supposed idea last night.
What do you make of the president saying that that he can't imagine it? He can't imagine. I'm sure on one level he can't, but he is the one who suggested that people somehow inject themselves with these cleaners. So he suggested it, and people did it, and he's shocked.
Right. Look, he's disowning any responsibility for it, which shouldn't be shocking to any of us. But it's remarkable because, of course, he knows the answer to the question. The answer to the question is, yeah, I know what happened. Yeah, it's because I spoke last Thursday. And what I said was suggest to people that perhaps ingesting disinfectant might help cure coronavirus in some way, shape, or form. So he does know the answer to it.
Last night, my reason led me to look online to try to find some more information here, Liz Harrington, and I found an article from Reason by Elizabeth Nolan Brown breaking down how in March, well before President Trump made this comment, in March of this year, we were already seeing more poison control calls, but that's because people are in their homes more, and you have much more disinfectant usage, and they're trying to pin this on President Trump, which is not surprising coming from the media, but it is stunning, I would say.
It's absolutely stunning. And if you'll notice, nobody said drink Clorox or rubbing alcohol except Democrats and the media. I mean, they're the ones that were hysterically amping this up and then, of course, freaking people out and say, oh, no, do I have a problem? That's, of course, not what President Trump was talking about. And of course, they ignore the fact that President Trump was absolutely right with his instincts when you're talking about the UV light and heat, using it in the lungs, which where's the media going to interview Cedars-Sinai Hospital that's already underway doing those tests to fight the coronavirus? But I also find it curious that CNN, whose own anchor, his wife, is literally taking baths in Clorox bleach. Chris Cuomo, that was their cure to fight the coronavirus. And yet they're going to lecture the rest of us about something that the president didn't even say. It is patently absurd. And this is why it's just such a waste of time to have the media with these gotcha questions that are doing no service to the American people. It sounds like they want people to drink bleach, just like they wanted someone to drink fish tank cleaner when there was a heck of a lot more to that story as well.
Well, I just have to say that talk about belittling the intelligence of the American people to try to take something that has been happening already for understandable reasons when you're around and using disinfectants a lot more and you're in your home a lot more and saying, no, this is President Trump, and people actually listening to this idea, supposedly, and you're right that he did not say this, that they should drink bleach or Clorox or something like that. I mean, they just have such a low opinion of the American people. But then Chris Cuomo, you mentioned him. It was stunning that this is the guy who was in his basement, supposedly throughout the entire quarantine period, puts up a video where he's coming out of the cave and his kids are there. One of them is filming it. And he actually was out and about on Easter Sunday when he had that run-in with a bicyclist and got into, an argument with him, and yet was acting like he was doing his thing and keeping social distancing. And by the way, bringing his kids into it with that video, Liz.
It's unbelievable. It's so dishonest, and it's so arrogant to think that the rules that I'm going to lecture the rest of America to follow, and I'm going to shame people that are going on a beach in Florida, and then yet you actually have the virus and you're breaking quarantine when you're still contagious. And mind you, he was visiting a house that's not even finished being built yet. So it's not like he was indoors at all. And good for that bicyclist. these people, this is what I think you're seeing, the uprisings and protests. What people inherently have a problem with is one set of rules that the media and Democrats wish to live by, and then a completely different set of rules that the rest of us plebes have to follow. And that's why people are so upset. It's so arbitrary what Governor Whitmer did in Michigan, and micromanaging every aspect of your life to fight this virus. And yet you see these so-called elites aren't following the rules themselves. And that's the double standard that people are just so sick and tired of. And they're so arrogant that they can get away with it, but they can't hide the truth and then stage a fake, phony escape from quarantine. Who is buying this?
Liz Harrington, again, our guest, national spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Sticking with the topic of the media here, we weren't able to get this clip, but I have a quote here from Joe Scarborough saying this on Morning Joe yesterday. If the last 2 weeks haven't completely made null and void the 25th Amendment, if a president behaving this way while a pandemic sweeps across the country and kills more people actually than died in Vietnam War, and the president just said a couple months earlier that it was just one person coming from China, let me just say the 25th Amendment is de facto abolished. The massive growth of government in effect made void for all practical purposes, the 10th Amendment. You can add the 25th Amendment to that right now because this president is behaving in a way that is so dangerous, extraordinarily irrational, in the middle of a pandemic that is changing history, that is destroying our economy day by day. You get the picture, Liz Harrington. So 25th Amendment, this crisis demonstrates we need to use it finally to remove President Donald Trump.
Maybe we need a 25th Amendment for the mainstream news media.
By the way, did I do it okay in that reading? Was that okay? Was that emotional enough, on point to cover Joe Scarborough?
I don't think it was quite hysterical enough.
Okay, gosh,
I can't even watch Morning Joe anymore. It's just too hysterical and unhinged. And you know, they've been using this for a very long time. I mean, just ask Andy McCabe, you know, who's trying to use the 25th Amendment, and we'll probably be learning a little bit more soon about all of that corruption going on throughout this, against this president throughout, before he was even elected. It's just unbelievable that now it shows there's nothing that Democrats in the media won't use to attack this president. You know, this should be a fight that we're all in together. And this is a time to look and say, look what communist China did, not just to us, to the world. And yet here we have the mainstream media so eager, and Democrats, to place the blame at the feet of the American president when he acted. He's always acted. He's always taken it seriously. And yet they have no shame. They go back. What were they doing all throughout January? I believe they were saying our biggest national security threat was withholding aid momentarily to Ukraine. It had nothing to do with communist China. And so now the media is trying to rewrite the script. They're trying to say, oh, the intel leakers that we relied on to try to impeach a duly elected president were actually warning about a coming pandemic, when the media themselves was obsessed with impeachment that literally no Americans actually cared about. And they were also obsessed with downplaying this virus. There's plenty of clips that President Trump showed in the briefing room that showed the media wasn't taking this seriously. And in fact, President Trump was, and he formed the task force. As I said, he shut down travel. So their argument is just so inconsistent, but they're never going to be consistent. It's always hysterical attacks.
So something else that was very striking to me is Politico's reporting that Vice President Joe Biden has floated this idea, which I've seen some perpetuate this on the left, that President Trump just might postpone the 2020 November 3rd election. Politico reporting that this is something that Joe Biden has stated. Jonathan Turley, noted constitutional law professor, has called this a conspiracy theory, and rightly so. Now, this is President Trump, I think, giving Biden too much credit. This is cut 3. Yesterday at his press conference when he was specifically asked about this.
A question about the 2020 election. Yeah. Your likely Democratic opponent, Joe Biden, recently suggested that you were considering changing the date of the election, that you might try something like that. That's my first question. The second question
I never even thought of changing the date of the election. Why would I do that? November 3rd. It's a good number. No, I look forward to that election, and that was just made-up propaganda, not by him, but by some of the many people that are working, writing little statements. I see all the time, statement made, you say so, statement made per Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe. He didn't make those statements, but somebody did. But they said he made it. No, let him know I'm not thinking about it at all. Not at all.
I think President Trump was giving a little too much credit to Joe Biden. My suspicion is that Biden did actually say it. Why would President Trump think about it? And not only that, it's not even constitutionally authorized. He needs to do it on November 3rd. It's going to happen, and yet they're perpetuating this. What do you make of that idea, Liz Harrington?
It's absolutely bizarre. It's totally a conspiracy theory. And, you know, it really shows that this is Hillary 2.0. What was Hillary Clinton doing in the run-up of, Donald Trump, then candidate Trump, is not going to accept the results of the election. Meanwhile, Democrats have still not accepted the results of that election. And now they're doing the same thing. It's the same playbook. Why? The only party that's actually using the pandemic to meddle in the way we vote and the way elections are done in this country is the Democratic Party. They're trying to do a ruse for nationwide ballot harvesting, saying, oh, we just have to vote by mail because of this pandemic, when in reality, they want to gut all of our voter integrity laws. You'll have no voter ID requirements with absentee ballots, no signature verification, and you'll have paid Democratic operatives like they do in California to go from nursing home to nursing home to nursing home, picking up thousands of ballots in bulk. So much for social distancing. So Democrats are the ones who are using this pandemic as an excuse to change the way we vote in this country. And maybe they're just trying to deflect from what they're trying to do nationally, but it's absolutely absurd that we would change President Trump's been so consistent on this. Of course, we're going to have an election. And Joe Biden supposedly was saying the same thing. You know, we had an election during the Civil War. We had an election during whatever pandemic he couldn't remember. He said it was in the teens. This is just absurd argument that Biden is trying to get attention out of.
Now, final question, about a minute left with you, Liz Harrington, and that is, in 2020, this election cycle is not what was anticipated. I mean, President Trump, I'm broadcasting from Colorado. He was just here in February with a big rally. I mean, rallies are part of the meat and potatoes of the Trump campaign. At least for the time being, he can't do those rallies. How do you think the virtual campaign, so-called, is going right now? Just give us a little eye into how the RNC is viewing it.
Absolutely. So we certainly wish we could get out there and do rallies. We love them. However, the RNC and the Trump campaign was able to seamlessly go online within 24 hours. So since the quarantines really started in mid-March, we've made 20 million phone calls, all with our grassroots volunteers that are using the skills and the trainings that we're doing them all online. And they're just, instead of door knocking, they're making more phone calls. So we're still very engaged. The Trump campaign is holding virtual events every single night. They're all getting over 1 million views. So we still have that energy. And we hope to be getting out in the campaign trail soon. But we've seamlessly switched online, and we see that energy that hasn't gone away.
Liz Harrington, spokesperson for the Republican National Committee. Thanks so much for joining us today. Always great to check in with you guys, and please stay well and healthy.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Again, Liz Harrington from the Republican National Committee joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Thanks for watching this clip of Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe today to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel. You do not want to miss our live show. Thanks for your support.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense. Yeah.